Thank you. I used to represent Dayton, Ohio for 24 years. I'm a Democrat, and I was very proud to be the major sponsor of this legislation in 1988. Actually, it started through a great lady that some of you might know, Vonette Bright, who was with Campus Crusade for Christ, and she is the one who called me from California almost every night for about 6 months to keep on me to be sure that we can get this bill passed. I understood right away what she was saying to me, because I do understand the power there is when people get together and they pray. It's Frank Wolf and I have been buddies for a long time. Matter of fact, we still pray together every Tuesday that Congress is in session, Democrat and Republican, at 4 o'clock. We've been doing it for 25 years. We've never had an argument. We disagree. We often sometimes vote. We used to vote against each other all the time, but there was a lot of things that brought us together: family and human rights and hunger and a lot of issues. And we found a lot of things that, through our wives and our children, it's pretty hard to get up and go to the floor of the House after you've prayed with your colleague and get mad. You can't do it. It's impossible. And I've had to get used to, praying together here, because I know when I started out, I wasn't a believer when I came to the Congress of the United States. I didn't believe in much except myself. I became a believer. I fell in love with the Lord here. A lot of people laugh, and I oftentimes tell the joke that I was once introduced right after I was a believer, and a friend got up and said, "Now it's my pleasure to introduce Tony Hall. He's a U.S. Congressman and a Christian." And there was a lot of laughs. An older man down front was squirming in his chair, and he finally hollered up because he couldn't take it much longer. He said, "Make up your mind, buddy, you can't be both." But I know in Washington, D.C., we have this issue that if we have a problem here, the way we solve it is not to pray. We say, well, we've got a problem. We've got to pass a bill. We've got to appropriate some money. Let's pass it. And oftentimes when we pass it, it doesn't do a heck of a lot of good, because I think we forget to check, and we forget to be called to prayer. And can you imagine what the city would look like if we could start to pray together as Democrats and Republicans? The people in this country want that. And I know it goes on a lot among these men and women that are here and some that are not here. So what's wrong with the day of prayer? What is wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it. There's power in it. There's strength. There's accountability. And we need to check with God and find out and get some direction from Him. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here.
Tony, to you and Frank, we thank you for laying the foundation for this great resolution. And just to let you know that it continues to this day, I want to present at this time a dear friend of mine, Mike McIntyre, who co-chairs the Congressional Prayer Caucus, who happens to be a Democrat, but also happens to be a great friend of mine. Mike McIntyre.
Thank you, Tony. I'm thrilled to be here with my esteemed colleagues who have such a rich history as Tony and Frank Wolf has described. Let me just say this, that when we look at the legal side of this, the law itself says that Congress, that the President shall set aside and proclaim a suitable day each year, and it goes on to describe about the National Day of Prayer. But the key phrase here, it says, on which the people of the United States may, M-A-Y, may turn to God in prayer and meditation. And when you think about that, that's not forcing anybody. Last time I heard that you may do something, that's not you shall, you may. So I think there's been a misunderstanding here from the legal side. It's not requiring people to do anything. It says that they may. And I I think that three-letter word clears it up. And of course, when we think about what it means to understand the National Day of Prayer, to say that our nation may turn to God, it's an opportunity for us to do what we've done historically, what our historic underpinnings are, and understanding the precedent that has been set. And that every president, Republican or Democrat, no matter what their religious background or faith has been, has issued these proclamations since they were allowed to do so and chose to do so and were asked to do so. And we are pleased that they have, in fact, done so. Let me also mention something historically. You know, when we talk about our founding fathers, we do know many of them were people of great faith. One of those that we acknowledge was probably not of the strongest religious faith, but was the oldest and probably seen as the wisest at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. And at the age of 81 stood up. That was a pretty old age today. It's a pretty old age way back then especially. And before that Constitutional Convention adjourned to announce what they've been working on from May of 1787 till September of 1787, he stood up and told them to wait a minute. He said, there's something else we need to do. What did Ben Franklin himself say to the convention, which I think sets the tone what the National Day of Prayer is about when you put it in its historical context? And even someone like Ben Franklin, who was not known to be the most religious person, himself acknowledged the fact that we should be able to turn to God in prayer when he said, I've lived a long time, sir, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it likely that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, he said in the sacred writings, that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this, he said, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. So what we're engaged in today is a fulfillment of that. We're engaged in all this Babel because people don't want to turn or be allowed to turn or say, you may turn to God to ask for his concurring aid, as Ben Franklin himself said. So let's get real in terms of what the National Day of Prayer is, what the historic precedent is, what the facts are, what the law actually says, and what, indeed, our people as citizens should be able to do. God bless you all, and thanks for being here.
Now, I just want to encourage you to make sure we remember this. A lot of people are upset about this decision. I think this is a great time for us to have a lot of hope. When you see all these members, I want you to be able to hear from them. I'm going to do something now we've got to have prayer to do, and that is to ask you to keep your remarks to about 30 seconds or so that we can get all of these members in, because I want you to hear from them, their thoughts on this National Day of Prayer and this decision. I want to begin with Mike Pence, the conference chairman of the Republican Party, followed by Lincoln Davis. Mike?
Thanks, Randy. Let me lead by example. Thank Congressman Forbes, Congressman McIntyre for their leadership on this issue, and say what an honor it is to be able to share the podium with former Congressman Hall and my colleague Frank Wolf. To all those that are gathered here, let me say simply, the American people believe in prayer. The American people believe that prayer changes things by virtue of the fact that in 1952, Congress passed a law saying the President might set aside a day suitable for prayer, and thanks to the leadership of those that are gathered here, the first Thursday in May is that day on which Americans may pray. We gather in this place to urge the administration in a bipartisan fashion to use all means at its disposal to challenge this decision and defend the importance of prayer in American life for all the American people.
I'm Lincoln Davis from Tennessee's 4th Congressional District, a Democrat. I'm honored that we are gathered here today, those of us who serve in the U.S. House, to be sure that the world knows, and certainly those who live in our great nation, that there are those of us who pray daily, and it's our wish and our hope, and to encourage others through our example, that they too will look to God for guidance. I realized many, many years ago, as I studied the Scriptures, I watched my mother and father wear a Bible out with kerosene lamp in the late 40s and early 50s. Literally wear the Bible out and had to buy another one. I knew there was something in that book that would be a guiding